folks, Silvis here. This is technically an FDR video, but server save is currently happening, and I'm not exactly in the mood to play. So, in America, the election happened. It was an epic battle in the sense that it really wasn't any of that. When it came down to it, Donald Trump won. He didn't win by a small margin either. He pretty much cruised to victory. States that should have been a little bit more competitive were not. States that should have been in the Hillary camp were not. States that he should have only won with a great effort were not. It was a pretty crushing defeat. As we go forward, time will tell what exactly, how things will be, whether or not the fears that we that supported Hillary have will be founded or unfounded. Regardless of that fact, though, the rest of us kind of have to, we got to keep going. I joke, and I think others have probably joked about the whole, I'll move to Canada kind of thing. Except that's not really a realistic, an option for us. But it's telling that that's something that we joke about, because it has just enough of a hint of truth for it to be a funny joke, Like saying, I'll move to Mars, well, that doesn't make sense. That's just dumb. But the we'll move to Canada kind of thing is it's got that hint of truth to it, where it's not that I'd actually move to Canada, it's that I'd almost consider moving to Canada. When I weigh my options, abandoning the country almost seems like a viable option. So we do need to go forward, and Canada's not the option. So here I am to give you guys some advice on how to proceed, okay? So, the first thing is that not all of Donald Trump's supporters were terrible. Some of them were, legitimate good people, and, there's a difference of opinion. A lot of us were appalled by the things Donald Trump said, and his behavior, but a lot of other people looked beyond that and said, he's an imperfect messenger, but the message is good. So even though he might not be the perfect person, what is needed is the thing that he brings. So even though he's not great, we still need it. So don't hate on all of his supporters. However, at the same time, a large portion of his supporters are pretty terrible people, and there's a good chance they're probably going to rub this in our faces. And I didn't say it in one of my videos, but I would have if it ever had popped up, is that there is a sense to be, generous in victory. To, extend a hand to your opponent. But that's only true in a fight that is a just fight, and a fight where we both respect each other. And this was not a fight that either side respected the other. And, if we had won, I would have said to not be generous, to beat them down and crush them. Because that's what I felt was necessary, to smash them so they never rise again. And you could probably expect that behavior in return. So, go into that with eyes open. Anybody who is a Trump supporter, don't talk politics to him. Anyway, that's all temporary stuff. The best thing, though, is you're going to have to come to peace with this. And the best way to do that involves rationalizing it. And I'm actually really good at rationalizing things. So I'm going to tell you how we can rationalize the Donald Trump thing. The first thing is to consider that, as bad as this actually looks, Donald Trump's elected by a sizable margin, and the Republicans still have the Senate and the House. As crushing of a defeat as this was, and as great of a victory as this was for the Republicans, this isn't actually the worst case scenario. Most like political, analysts had said that the worst case scenario would be a narrow Hillary win and the House and the Senate stay Republican. That would have been the worst case scenario because we would have had 4 years of absolute constant gridlock. And that's not what we got. So we have, so I mean, it could have been worse. That's one way to rationalize it. And, to do that, we also need to look at because there is a silver lining here. You can take it a couple of ways. For one, in 2008, Obama won. Pretty crushing victory. Democrats had control of the Senate, and I think they had control of the House. If they didn't have complete control, they had, most control. And with that, Obama, went out of control with a completely compliant legislative branch that allowed him to do whatever he wanted. And that gave birth to the Tea Party. So even if, Donald Trump doesn't go out of control, we have an opportunity to strike back. Now, in reality, the 2018 midterm elections, more Democrat Senate seats will be up for grabs than Republicans. So we're probably not going to do well in 2018 either. But there's 2020. And since we have no goals ourselves to fight for, we can now do one of two things. We can do what the Republicans did, which was oppose and obstruct every single thing that the Republicans do. Or we can take this time and bide our time and muster our strength and prepare for our great comeback in 2020, ideally. So, we have an opportunity to, rebuild our weakened foundations. So, that's one thing that's good. And, as another pro is that the current batch of Republicans in the Senate and in Congress have fine-tuned their obstructionist policies. They're all about preventing things from getting done. Hopefully they haven't learned how to actually get things done because they have no practice with that. Senator Ted Cruz has basically done nothing but be a wall in front of Obama. And now, now there's a... now they need to get stuff done. I don't think Ted Cruz has ever actually done anything. There's that. And there's also some division in the Republican Party. And the Republican Party is going to go through an evolution at this point. Or a revolution, perhaps. There will be infighting and stuff like that Democrats can take advantage of. But we want to focus though on right now the fact that it's not the worst case scenario. There is a silver lining here. We can come back from this. And I said that here's another thing I said too. Even back months back, I said I almost want Donald Trump to win, and I listed two reasons. And the first one I believe is somewhat valid, although still scary. To me, Donald Trump was like a kind of sketchy gamble. Take all of your money and buy lottery tickets. For the most part, that's a pretty bad investment strategy. Nobody would tell you that's a good idea. You're probably going to lose big on it. But you might not. You might actually win big on it. So I think, and most of us Democrats, or at least Clinton supporters, agreed that Donald Trump was most likely going to be terrible. But there is, and there was, a chance that that wouldn't be the case, and that instead he'd actually be he might just happen to be the perfect thing that we need, the panacea to all the country's woes, the cure-all. He might be. So, while there's a chance that things could be pretty bad, there's a chance that things could just be normal. But he might actually be the perfect solution. And, like I had said, and I still think, that this gamble isn't a good idea. But since we're making the gamble regardless, it might work. So, I mean, there is that. Because, I never thought that Hillary would actually solve the problems. I think she would have just continued, maintained the course, kept the status quo. I believe the country's in the process of declining. With her at the helm, it would have continued declining. I don't think it would have gone faster. I don't think it would have gone slower. I don't think it would have been reversed. We weren't at a critical point either. It's not like, if Hillary was elected 2 years later, or, I mean, if nobody was elected, I guess I should say, 2 years later, it would be the collapse of Western civilization. So, I mean, I wouldn't have said to make this gamble because our backs weren't to the wall. This gamble didn't need to be made now. We could have taken Hillary Clinton for 4 or 8 years and then hoped that, in 2020 or 2024, we would have had an actual good option. And again, I don't think she would have been a bad option. I think she would have been an okay president. But, here we are. So, I mean, there is that gamble chance. There is a legitimate chance. I don't know what percentage is, but there's a chance that he could be the perfect solution to a lot of our problems. The other thing is that this election has validified the Tea Party policies to a certain extent. Republicans have fought Democrats and said, our policies will work, we just need a chance to implement them. Now they have their chance to implement them. And implement them, they most certainly will. And one of two things will happen. Either it'll turn out that they were right, and that these policies are great, and, then we'll all benefit from that, and us Democrats will have to kind of sit in the back and be like, well, I don't want to admit it, but okay. Or it won't work. And these Tea Party, ultra socially conservative and weird policies that I don't like will explode violently. And then after they explode, presumably, Donald Trump will either lose in 2020 or 2024. But that will be the death knell for this series of policies. So either they will work or they'll die painfully. Unfortunately, we'll get hurt in the process, but... So, I mean, there is this silver lining. There is things to look forward to. And another, alright, so here's one other thing I think that can kind of help us. This election wasn't so much about the virtues and the pros and the benefits of Donald Trump. It was mostly about the negatives and the dislike for Hillary Clinton. So to a certain extent, we nominated the wrong candidate. Bernie Sanders would not have been a better candidate because his policies would have never been implemented to the point where they would be successful. They would be neutered and curtailed to the point where they were pointless, and it would have taken so long for Bernie Sanders' policies to ever show results, because that's just how... Bernie Sanders was talking about a massive society-wide restructuring. And that's not something that takes place in a year or 2 years. That's something that takes place over 10, 20 years. Bernie Sanders would have set the course for that, but we wouldn't have seen any kind of results, and we would have just seen painful change. Change is always unpleasant. Nobody likes change. So with Bernie Sanders, before we could have ever seen the payoff, and I think there would have been payoff, but before we could have ever seen it, we would have dealt with years of painful change while the Republicans in Congress and the Senate did everything in their power to thwart that change and neuter it. And the American public would have been disgusted with it before it ever came close to completion. So Bernie Sanders was never going to work. His policies may have been right. He is a great guy, but it was never going to happen. Our problem, though, was that we did, in fact, nominate Hillary Clinton instead of an actual, moderate or something along those lines, which is what we really needed. So Hillary Clinton was a flawed candidate. She for sure was. I still think she was better than Donald Trump, but she was flawed. And we can console ourselves with the fact that, yes, we now have 4 years of Trump at least. But it wasn't because our policies were wrong. It was because Hillary Clinton was a flawed candidate. Now, whether or not that's true, and in fact, that's exactly what the Republicans would have said if Donald Trump had lost, and I acknowledge that fact. That is exactly what the Republicans would have said if they had lost. But that's the situation we find ourselves in. So, we're just gonna have to get through this. The one other thing I want to say too is, and this is the thing I was thinking afterwards. I'm thinking about this, and I'm torn up. I'm just like, I'm not sick to my stomach, but I'm just disgusted, and I feel this sense of nervousness. In my stream, actually, I was saying how I feel like that sense of dread where I know I'm about to get yelled at, and it's just not happening yet. Like, I'm walking to the principal's office, and I have to tell the principal what I did. I'm coming home with a bad report card. Or I'm walking to my mom to tell her that, like, I broke a window or something. That sense of dread where, like, every step forward, I'm just like, oh, man. Like, I know I have to do it. I can't avoid it. There's no way for me to not do it, but I'm so stressed. And that's how I feel. And I think about that when I think that, they're going to be hyper validated. They're going to have all this motivation, and they've got all three of the, the Senate, the House, and the thing. I think most states have Republican governors, and now Donald Trump is going to get to fill that Supreme Court vacancy, and like 2 or 3 more might retire. If Hillary won, she could have reshaped the Supreme Court. That was a huge missed opportunity. Right now, I'm focused on how I think the next 4 years are going to be horrible. But it's also worth mentioning that one of the biggest chances to solidify the Democrats' base of power, which was nominating new Supreme Court justices, we dropped the ball on that. We lost it. And now the opposite is going to happen. Supreme Court justices stay on there for 20 years or something like that. It's a big deal. Even if Donald Trump only lasts 4 years and the next 6 presidents are Democrats, we might still have, it's not good. But the thing I think to myself is, I'm disgusted that this situation happened, but you know what? I'm kind of disgusted in myself because I didn't actually do anything. Yes, I voted. I did. And then, I made these videos trying to be like, this is why trickle-down economics is bad. Here's why you shouldn't vote for Trump. Here's why you shouldn't vote for third-party candidates. And I did try to make these videos. But I think, to be honest with you, these videos were less about me, me trying to inform other people of issues and more about me being like, I like to talk about politics, so I'm going to do it. These videos were about me and not about others to a certain extent. And I acknowledge that. But, I could have actually volunteered. I saw things like, CNN was talking about what had happened, and they were saying how, there were these, outreach programs to get, the Latinos to vote, and they ran out of money and couldn't, get all the people to, get registered to vote, and there just was no money coming in. I could have donated. All right, to be fair, I have no money. I couldn't have donated. But, I could have volunteered. I've been unemployed since, early August. I could have, legitimately volunteered. There's a lot of things I could have done, and I didn't. I was assured that Hillary would win, even though I had that, nagging doubt that she might not. But for, I was, pretty assured that she was going to win. And, I just sat there and I didn't do anything. So next time, we have to not take anything for granted. And next time, we have to actually do things. Because this crap was important. This was a really important election. To us Democrats, Donald Trump is a walking disaster. That's how a lot of us view him. And we didn't do enough. Hillary was a failed candidate. Donald Trump, we can make all the excuses and whatnot, but ultimately, we didn't carry the ball down the court. We screwed up. We didn't carry the ball down the field. So, next time we got to do better. We really do. Alright, folks, that's it for me. I will see you guys later.